Hello and welcome to another video with Arnott. So in this video we're going to do lots of different things. So I'll be teaching how to basically, we're going to touch up a photo, we're going to create a beautiful mono effect and show you the best way of doing that, getting different colours so you can get different mono effects, different shades of colour, and be able to change that at any time on the fly, so not nice and quick. So when we're creating a black and white image or a mono image, it's choosing the right subject really, and this is really nice because it's got lots of texture. You can see lots of texture in the owl, in his face, lots of feather detail there, and we want to bring that out. We want to make it look quite gritty. And after we've done that, we may go on and do something a little bit more arty and show you some different effects to get into the more creative mode. Okay, so let's start off. First of all, we need to view our layers. So when we click on our layers, you can see the background layer there. And I always start off, right click and duplicate the layer. And that just protects your actual layer there. Okay, so that's the first stage. Now, I'm actually going to go back to the layers and duplicate this again, because what I want to do is to create a nice sharp image, a gritty image. So we're going to apply lots of sharpening to this. And the way we're going to do that is to use a filter called the high pass filter. So we go to filter on the menu, and we go to other and high pass. Now, when we get that, it looks a bit like a grey slate is the way that I like to think of it. And you can see some detail coming through on it. As you adjust the slider, that changes. You can see more of the image coming through. Now, quite often, if you're using this for sharpening, the radius will be quite small, probably about 8:1, maybe a little bit higher. You want to be quite gritty, so I'm going to go to 2.8, and you can just see the whites coming through the high pass filter there. So I'm going to click OK on that. And then what we do is we go to the layer mode, which is on normal at the moment. So we click there and we click on soft light. Now if I just hide this layer, so by clicking the eye there, let's put another 2 on. Can you see how it's sharpened the image? If you look at the feathers, especially around the eye, you can see it's added a bit more grit to the actual image. It's quite sharp. If that was too much, you can always change the opacity and move it down so you can get any adjustment that you want on that. I want it all the way up on this one. Okay, so now we've done that, I'm going to merge this down to the layer below. So to do that, I right click and I merge down. And because we duplicated the layer, we've still got the original underneath. So that's the unsharpened image. You can see there, when we click these little eyes to the left of the layers, that hides or shows the layer. Okay, so we've got our gritty version, our sharpened version. I'm going to duplicate this again. Because we may be doing things with this a bit later. So I've now got 3 layers, 2 are the same. I'm making sure I've selected the layer that I want to work on by clicking on it. Okay, and now what we're going to do is to create our black and white or mono effect. And you can do either using this technique. And if we look at the layers palette, and we look at the bottom of there, you've got various buttons going along, and if you put your mouse over them, it will tell you this will delete the layer, this will create a new layer, this will create a folder or a new group, this is for adjustments, we've got masks, and we've got effects. Now, we want to be creating a an adjustment layer on this. So I'll click on there and I'll select solid colour right at the very top there. Now when this comes up, everything's gone black in this case. It could be any colour. If you click on this colour chart, and you can use a slider and go to different colours, I'm going to select a very shallow pale blue, sorry, a dark blue rather, so like a grey blue colour effect there. And I can change this later, but that's basically what I want. So on your slider, get to around this position, and you can play to your heart's content with this. So this is just what I want. You may want a different colour. Well, let's just click on OK. Now where's the picture gone? Okay, that doesn't come into play until we change the actual mode of the layer. So I change it from normal to colour, which is right down the bottom there, just above luminosity. And there we've got this nice mono effect. Now the beauty of this is if I double click on this, this brings this colour box up, and I can move this around so you can see how that affects the image. If I wanted a true black and white picture, then I could either go to black in the corner, or I could go to white, pure white up the top left corner, and that gives me a true mono. Whether you go to black or white will give you true black. That looks exactly the same. In other words, you could use black or white, you'll get the same effect. But I want to be around here. You can experiment to your heart's content. You know, if I was to move this slider, we could go through the different shades of colour. So basically you can get any mono effect by using this method. That's roughly what I want. I'm going to click OK on that. There we go. Okay, so the important thing is, in almost all cases with this, what we're doing is this needs to be the top layer, because otherwise anything we put above that, it's going to affect the colour. It's going to change the colour, and we want to keep this basic colour. So if we add other images or other layers, always click on the one below before you do that, and then it will put it underneath the top layer. So if you've got that layer selected and you put anything on, then you'll get that effect. So that's how to create a nice image. But there's other things you can do, and we're going to go through a lot on this video, so bear with me, but you will learn a lot. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this layer. So I'm going to right click on it and duplicate it once more. I'm going to click here, and I'm going to select, let's have a look, multiply. Now that really darkens the image. And you can see if I go to the opacity on the layer, if I want the picture to be darker, I can change the 1 to multiply and bring this in to get the depth that I want. So is that too much? I'm going to go a little bit darker. Okay, now we've learned these techniques now. So we've got the colour fill, and again I'll turn it off with the eye. Still got our colour photo there. We've got the background layer, which is multiply. Now just to stop any confusion, I'm going to double click on this where it says background copy 3 there, and I'm going to type in multiply. And then we can look at it straight away and say, yeah, that layer's doing that basically. And this background copy below that, that's just solid 100%, so we're not seeing through that, we're not seeing anything that's below that. Okay, so That's the multiply. The thing is with that is it's darkened some areas that I don't want it to. So this is when we talk about using a mask. So again, on the layers palette, this button produces a mask, which is like a white box. And if I use the black brush, if I just get a brush and I'll change the size of the brush, I'll start off quite small, just so you can see. Just click on here so that disappears. So I've got the settings on opacity 100% and the flow I've got down to 25%. I'm going to take that down a little bit more. So I've got it on 18% now. Just click on there. The brush I want quite large, so we can change the size of the brush from here. And you can also use the keyboard, which is the method that I use. Now, if you look at your enter key on the keyboard, and to the left of that you've got the two parenthesis brackets and the square brackets underneath that. And if you press those two keys, the one on the right will make the brush larger and the one on the left makes it smaller. That's really nice to learn that technique. So I'm going to make it larger and I'm going to click, and I'm painting on this mask and you can see the colour coming on that mask there. And I'm making this lighter because I'm burning a hole as such in this layer. I want to show a bit more of the owl, but I want to keep the darker areas. So if I change this layer now, it's affecting the background but not the actual bird. So I've got that set at around 55% now. Okay. Now what I would also like to do is I would like to add a bit more light to the right eye. I'd like to bring that out a little bit. Now this is a technique I've showed many times, but I'm going to show it again. I click on the lasso tool, and this is a tool that I use all the time. This is my most common method, and the important thing is the feather. Now if we're working on a big image, one from straight from a camera say, and it's not being cropped in any shape or form, I would suggest using a feather of around 70 to 80, but experiment. And basically what that means is when you draw with this tool, you get a very soft feathered out edge to it, which is really nice. You create great effects with this. So we've got 70 typed in. If you haven't got that, just type it in. So for instance, I'll type in 80 space px, click outside the box, and that's how you change the feather. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to draw in this area around the eye that I want to lighten. Okay, and when I've done that, I go to my adjustments. So I'll click on adjustments there, and I'll select a curve adjustment by clicking this button there. Now when this comes up, I'm just going to drag this and make this bigger so we can see better. Basically, we're going to learn to use this in two methods. Working from the middle, if I click and I drag down, it's going to make things darker. So I'm going towards the bottom right hand corner. If I go up towards the top left, it's going to make it brighter. So I'm just going to find a point that's giving enough light to that eye, so it's not too much. So imagine you're working a diagonal line from corner to corner and move in that direction. I want a bit of shadow there, but not so much. There we go. So you can see I'll bring out light where I want it, and also this left hand side I want a little bit darker. So again, I'll click, I'm going to drag, because I want to bring some detail out, especially in this white area. Okay, so I've gone around this area, and again, click on adjustments, I click on curves, and I'll bring it down the other way. You can see that's bringing out that texture on the feathers, which is why I want to bring that down a little bit. So I'm balancing up those sides of the face really. Not that you do that always, but I've still got enough light there so it doesn't look flat. You want to try and avoid making it look flat. To give shape and dimension to a picture, you need some shading on there, so you don't want to take everything away and make it totally flat. But we've got this nice shading down the right hand side of the bird there, and that's nice. Okay, so that gives a nice effect. So let's look at our layers now. See, we've got all these different things now. We've got the colour at the top, we've got this adjustment on the eye, this one is on the right eye, this one is the multiply layer, and then we've got our copies of the backgrounds below that. Okay, so let's put all those back on by clicking on the eyes. Remember, if we're going to add anything, we need to be below this colour fill layer. So always make sure you clicked on the layer below it before you do anything else. You can always drag that to the top if you made the mistake of doing that. You can move your layers around. So if I clicked on that and I move over this area and drag it down, I can drag it below the other layers. See, now it's disappearing. Bring it back to the top. There you go. So you can move it around if you need to. So that's looking good now. I quite like that. So that is how to get nice and arty with your image. Now what I would probably do, even more so, is just darken some other areas. So what I'm going to do with this, I'm going to use a marquee tool. So the elliptical marquee tool. So if you hold down the mouse, you've got your different tools there. Make sure we've got elliptical selected. And again, we got feathers on this. Now it's got 90 on there at the moment. I'll probably turn that down a little bit because I'm going to blur. Let's go to 0. I'm going to leave it at 0 because I'm going to create a blur on this. So I go to the top left hand corner, and what I'm doing, I'm getting the cross so that the two lines of the cross just touch the sides of the actual image. So I'm not putting the middle point up the top. I'm lining up those two little lines on the crosshair. And by using that and going down to the bottom, it gives me a nice even picture because I've zoomed across, nice selection. So it's equally spaced out by doing that and using those crosshairs as a marker, as an indicator. I'm just going to double click the hand tool now, and that will zone the picture to the full image and fill the screen. Now what I actually want, what I've got selected now, is the owl, and I want the reverse of that. So I'm going to select, deselect. No, I'm not, sorry. I'm going to go to select inverse, and that inverses the selection. So what's selected now is this area around the edge. And then I'm going to go to my layers, and I'm going to create a new layer below the colour fill. So I'll click on the one below, and I go to this button to create a new layer. Okay, so we've got our new layer. I now make sure I've got black selected. So I'll click on there, I'll drag right down to the bottom left, click on OK. Now another way of doing that is you've got the default colour button, which is just above the colours there. You can see that, and if I click that, that will give me black and white. White for the background, black for the foreground. So either way, it doesn't matter. Then we click on the bucket tool, the paint bucket, and I click once on the screen. And you see we've got this border around there now. Now I'll go to select, deselect. And what we're going to do now is we're going to blur this quite a bit. So I'm going to go to Filter on the menu, Blur, Gaussian Blur. So when I click on Gaussian Blur, you get this slider basically, and I'm going to slide this right up fairly high. So it's just, that's it, click on OK. Now to make this look better, because it looks quite harsh at the moment, we change the layer mode again. So where it says normal, I'll click on soft light, and then I'm going to bring the opacity down just a little bit, because this is called a vignette effect, and a good vignette really, I think, shouldn't be seen, it should be felt. So you shouldn't be seeing a harsh line there. So by changing the blending mode, by using the blur, allows you to do that, and you just bring it up enough just to give that vignette effect around the edges, make it slightly darker. Okay, so we're getting there now. Okay, so we looked at our layers again. We've got all these layers now, and remember we can change any of these at any time. You can change the opacity of them, lessen effect, make an effect more, such as the colour fill. If I brought that down a bit and I wanted to bring a bit of colour in, desaturated colour, I could do that. Or I could go all the way and turn it off. So at any point we can alter things, and I think that's a good way of working. Okay, so when I'm sort of happy with that, you've got to be a little bit careful when working with big images, especially with some cameras nowadays, which are, I think, over the top with the megapixels. And you're talking, if you want to edit pictures and you're working with a 50 megabyte image, it uses a lot of power on your PC. So I don't really see, personally, the benefit of using a camera that shoots at 50 megapixel unless you're working in studio conditions and you're going to be making huge posters, or you need to crop a lot of the image in some cases. So just a personal thing with me, but I don't like to go too high with the megapixels. If I was creating an image and I knew the size of it and I didn't need anything massive, I would probably reduce the file first of all to work on, make it more manageable so it's easier to edit. So size is the first thing you need to think about when you're editing your picture. How big do you need it? Okay, so what I'm going to do at this stage to cut down on the power. I mean, I have got a very powerful PC, so it's not going to cause me any problems whatsoever, but not everybody has. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to flatten the image. I'm happy with what I've got yet, so you wouldn't do that until you was happy, because we can't edit any of those layers now. But sometimes it's a good idea to do that if you're really happy with it and you think, I'm at a stage now where I'm not going to make any changes. Flattening the image will save you on a lot of energy the PC uses. Okay, so next stage. We've got our nice mono adjustment there. What I'm going to do now is something a little bit creative. Let's imagine we want some, let's think, rain. Okay, so let's say the L's sitting in some rain. Let's get a bit creative. I'm going to create some rain. So I'm going to go to the layers, so one. I'm going to select a new layer, click on there. And what I'm going to do is select a marquee tool, a rectangular marquee tool. I'm going to draw a rectangle. It's basically more or less the same shape of what I've got on the screen. I'm going to make it a lot smaller. So in other words, something doesn't going to be exact either. I'm going to create something about that size, like that. And I've got black already selected. I'm going to click on the bucket tool. I'm going to click within that rectangle. So you can see what the rectangle marquee tool does. It protects the rest of the image, and whatever you do will only happen inside that area. I'm going to deselect that, and then I'm going to click on the Move tool, which is at the top there, making sure I've got Show Transform Controls on, and make sure you've got Auto Select off, so that shouldn't be ticked. I'm going to drag it up to the top left of the image. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply a filter to this. So I'm going to add some noise. Filter, and then we go to Noise, and we go to Add Noise. Now we need to make sure that it's usually comes up on Uniform. Make sure that it's on Gaussian. Make sure that you tick Monochromic. Okay, so you've got that selected, and then the amount doesn't need to be too high. If you look at these dots, I'm going to go for around that. So that's, on mine, that's about 28. Yeah, around 28. Click on OK. Now you can play and experiment with this, because it depends on the image size, what you'll get on your picture. So I've now dragged that across, and I'm going to press the Enter key, or you can click on the tick on the options bar there, and that just says, yeah, I've completely transforming it, make the transformation for me. And the next thing we do now is to change the layer mode again, and we're going to select Screen. Okay, we've got something that looks a bit like snow. Okay, we're going to make it look like rain. So I'm going to go to Filter on the menu. I'm going to go to Blur. I'm going to select Motion Blur. Now, when you come on this, you can see you've got this angle, and you can twist that round. You can change the angle. You can change the distance. I want you coming down at an angle, something like that. Look on the distance, perhaps a little bit less. Click on OK. So that's my rain effect. Now, double click that. What I need to do with that is just resize it slightly so it overlaps. Slightly overlapping the picture, because you can see it's a bit blurred on the edges there. Okay, so there we've got some rain. Now what I could do on that, got a bit too much over the face there. So again, I can create a mask. Click on the mask, and I'm just going to mask out a little bit. So I'm going to use a black colour there. Again, the brush, more or less the same size. Might take the flow down just a little bit, so it's just down to 10%. And I'm just going to click and lessen the, keep clicking there, and I'm just painting out the effect where I don't want it. I'm going to leave a bit going across there. I just want to clear the face a little bit. Okay, now what we can also do, change the opacity slightly. Take the opacity down on that. Bring it in. Okay, there we go. Let's look at our layers again. You can see we've got something, just a little trick that adds a little bit of something to the image, if you want to get creative. Okay, so a few tricks there, and it learns you a little bit about layers and working with layers as well to do things like this. So a few tricks there that you've learned, hopefully. All the best from me, Les Arnott. Goodbye.